Don Quixote, written by Miguel de Cervantes, is often considered one of the greatest works of literature ever penned. Originally published in two parts, in 1605 and 1615, the novel tells the story of Alonso Quijano, a man from La Mancha, who becomes so enamored with tales of chivalry that he decides to reinvent himself as Don Quixote, a knight-errant. Armed with a suit of armor, a lance, and his steed, Rocinante, Don Quixote sets out on a series of adventures with his loyal but skeptical squire, Sancho Panza. The novel is a profound exploration of the clash between reality and idealism, often blending humor and tragedy in a poignant and satirical way.
Part 1. Don Quixote's First Adventures. At the heart of the novel is Don Quixote's delusion that he is a knight bound to the old codes of chivalry. He seeks to revive the fading traditions of knighthood by defending the helpless, seeking justice, and serving a noble lady. However, his so-called adventures often lead to comic misunderstandings due to his inability to distinguish between the reality around him and the romanticized world of knights and honor he has read about in books. In the first part of the novel, Don Quixote sets out on his journey, dubbing himself a knight-errant. One of his early escapades includes mistaking windmills for malevolent giants, which he valiantly charges at, only to be knocked to the ground. This scene has become one of the most iconic moments in literature, symbolizing the futility of battling illusions and the absurdity of idealism unchecked by reality. Another significant event is Don Quixote's encounter with a group of traveling actors. Believing them to be a band of enchanted warriors, he tries to attack them, only to be humiliated when his illusion shatters. His squire, Sancho Panza, often serves as a counterpoint to Don Quixote's delusions, representing practicality and common sense. However, Sancho is not without his own ambitions, as he hopes that Don Quixote's adventures will one day lead to his governance of an island. Despite these repeated failures and the ridicule they attract from the people they meet, Don Quixote remains steadfast in his quest. His unwavering belief in his role as a knight leads him into increasingly absurd situations, but his determination and sincerity make him an endearing, if misguided, character. Throughout his journey, Don Quixote continuously extols the virtues of knighthood, while Sancho provides a more cynical and humorous perspective on their misadventures. Themes of illusion versus reality. One of the central themes of Don Quixote is the tension between illusion and reality. Don Quixote's actions are motivated by his belief in the codes of medieval knighthood, which by his time are long outdated. He seeks to impose this fantastical worldview on a world that no longer operates under these ideals. This contrast is what makes his character both tragic and comedic. Cervantes uses this to critique not only the outmoded ideals of chivalry, but also the human tendency to cling to illusions and deny reality. Sancho Panza often tries to remind Don Quixote of the reality of their circumstances, but even Sancho is occasionally drawn into Don Quixote's world of illusions. The interplay between the two characters highlights the complexity of human nature, where fantasy and reality often intermingle. Don Quixote's idealism, while misguided, is portrayed as a source of nobility, and Cervantes presents a delicate balance between laughing at and admiring his protagonist. Dulcinea and idealized love. A significant aspect of Don Quixote's delusion is his devotion to a noble lady, whom he names Dulcinea del Toboso. In reality, Dulcinea is a simple peasant woman named Aldonza Lorenzo, whom Don Quixote has never actually met. He constructs an elaborate and idealized version of her, imagining her as the epitome of grace and beauty, and dedicates all of his heroic deeds to her honor. Dulcinea represents the unattainable ideal in Don Quixote's quest, further illustrating the theme of illusion versus reality. Throughout the novel, Don Quixote refers to her as his inspiration, even though she exists only in his mind as a perfect chivalric muse. His devotion to her underscores his commitment to the values of knighthood, but it also highlights the absurdity of his delusions. Sancho Panza, the faithful squire. Sancho Panza, Don Quixote's squire, serves as a foil to his master's idealism. While Don Quixote dreams of heroic battles and grand adventures, Sancho is grounded in the practicalities of daily life. He often questions Don Quixote's decisions, but follows him nonetheless, motivated by the promise of wealth and a governorship of an island, which Don Quixote has promised him. Sancho's loyalty to Don Quixote evolves throughout the novel. Initially skeptical of Don Quixote's madness, Sancho eventually begins to buy into some of his master's fantasies, though he often remains the voice of reason. His relationship with Don Quixote is central to the novel, as it represents the bond between two very different worldviews: idealism and pragmatism. Part 2. Deeper into madness and the tragic end. The second part of the novel, published 10 years after the first, sees Don Quixote and Sancho Panza returning to the road. Here, Cervantes explores their relationship in greater depth and adds layers to their characters. While the first part focuses on the humor and absurdity of Don Quixote's misadventures, the second part takes on a more reflective and introspective tone. As Don Quixote continues his journey, he begins to grapple with his identity and the contradictions in his mission. His delusions grow more intense, but so does the public's fascination with him. People begin to manipulate Don Quixote for their amusement, staging elaborate schemes to mock him. Despite this, Don Quixote's resolve remains, and he continues to pursue his chivalric ideals, even in the face of clear evidence that they are unattainable. The novel reaches its poignant conclusion when Don Quixote, after a series of defeats and humiliations, returns home and finally renounces his quest. He falls ill and, on his deathbed, comes to his senses, realizing that he is not a knight but simply Alonso Quijano. His moment of clarity is bittersweet, as it signals the end of his adventures, but also the death of his spirit. Don Quixote dies disillusioned, but his journey leaves a lasting impact on those around him, particularly Sancho, who remains loyal to his master until the very end. The legacy of Don Quixote. Don Quixote is more than just a novel about a delusional man. It is a profound exploration of the human condition. Cervantes examines the power of dreams, the tension between reality and fantasy, and the nature of heroism. Through Don Quixote's tragicomic journey, Cervantes invites readers to reflect on the nature of idealism and the inevitability of disillusionment. The novel's lasting influence on literature and culture cannot be overstated. Its themes of self-delusion, perseverance, and the clash between old and new ideals continue to resonate with readers and writers alike. Don Quixote has become a symbol of the individual's struggle to find meaning and purpose in a complex world, making Don Quixote a timeless work that remains relevant today. In conclusion, Don Quixote is a masterful blend of humor, tragedy, and philosophical inquiry. Its enduring popularity lies in its ability to capture the complexities of human nature and the eternal struggle between idealism and reality. Through the adventures of Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, Cervantes creates a rich tapestry of themes that continue to inspire readers centuries after the novel's publication.